Hello guys, and welcome to my Week 14 thoughts and reactions video to every single game. I'll try to get through this pretty quick. I don't think there were too many games that were like, ooh, let's look into this very much. But let's get it started with one of the bigger games of the week. I thought about making my own personal breakdown video of this just because I am a Packers fan, and this was obviously a huge game at this time in the season to kind of really determine whether the Packers are legit, whether the Lions are as hot as, everybody says. And I would say the Lions are a hot team. They are my best team in the league, especially after the slew of games and the Bills, being the way they are. The Eagles, I think, despite them being I think they're a good team, this year. And, they're a team to watch out for. There are more glaring issues to me than that. But getting down to this game, the thing that I'll say about my Packers is we really beat ourselves up in terms of the Watson fumble, obviously, being a kind of oddball anomaly. It almost looked like he forced his own fumble when he brought the ball in on his own shoulder, with the acrobatics, and that forced it loose, because otherwise you look at that drive and more than likely you may come away with 3 points or possibly a touchdown, which would have influenced the game a little bit more if it had played out the same. But Detroit, not able to run the ball as well as I thought they would be able to be. I was kind of surprised at that. It kind of makes me happy about my Packers to be able to essentially play their strength and make them beat them other ways. The major thing with my Packers, though, that has been the Achilles heel and that has been beating them is this over-the-middle passing to wide receivers as well as tight ends. So looking at this game, I'm not going to talk about the calls. Obviously, we all know that the calls were the no calls, some of the calls that were called and some of the ones that weren't called that were, similar instances. I'm not going to talk about that. I still think that my Packers had every chance to win this game, just not very good on fourth down. The Lions having a high efficiency rating there of converting 4 out of 5 fourth down attempts. And, I would say Goff looked really, really good, but I do think that it was to his benefit over how bad the middle of the field coverage was. Even in the red zone, quite a bit, getting 2 touchdowns off of essentially the same kind of design, but overall, I think a good game showed that both of these teams have very good offenses that can execute against, not pushover defenses, even with, the passes over the middle for my Packers. I think that, the defense, they were trying to make Goff beat him quite a bit, and he was able to do that. I think another major issue, I guess, was my Packers and how they played the screen, which was essentially, to me, kind of like what they had to do in order to get their offense going, to get the backs going, because they couldn't just straight up run the football. But otherwise, a good game. I think that this proves that both teams are legit. And I mean, this goes to show that, even the hottest team, at least in my opinion, in the NFL can, be beaten, but they're a very hard team to beat still. So moving on, we have Saints-Giants. Obviously, this was going to be a doozy of a game. I was actually worried the Giants were going to win because the Saints just weren't playing well. Yeah, and they had been playing well since they had fired their head coach. But this game looked a lot tougher than it should have been. If you had told me that, oh yeah, Drew Lock throws 21 of 49, for 200 yards, I'd been like, oh, you're crazy. Like, there's no way they're going to win that game with as low of a percentage as that is. And that sort of thing. And it's like, and Derek Carr, 20 of 31, pretty average. But they had, a decent run game when they did run it. They didn't run it a whole lot. But yeah, overall, just kind of a sloppy game. And like, who cares, right? But props to the Saints. Steelers, Browns, I kind of assumed that after getting punched in the jaw against the Browns in Cleveland a couple weeks ago, that Pittsburgh would be like, yeah, we're just not going to let that happen. And look what happened. I was like, yeah, this game isn't really worth watching like the other one. They really didn't get pressure on Russell Wilson. He did kind of whatever they want. They did kind of limit Najee Harris on the run. That really wasn't their type of thing. And it's like Russell Wilson distributed the ball well. But yeah, I don't know what Stefanski's obsession is with not having Chubb be one of the primary pieces of the game plan. Not getting him, to run the football that much, only 11 carries. And, one of them did go for 19 yards. And, if you look at, it would have been 10 carries for 29 yards, if it was that case. I mean, it would have been a very, abysmal game for Chubb if he hadn't had that longer run. But it's like, you need to keep on pushing the run game. And I get you're up against the Steelers, but it's like to have a one-dimensional attack to them just wasn't making it easy on Winston. And yeah, he threw 2 picks, 2 just bad picks, and he was getting sacked. But, props to the Steelers rebounding. It would have been kind of worrisome if they could barely beat the Browns in this game, after getting Maliwap by them and being one of the better teams in the league. Vikings-Falcons. Now, the Falcons seem to always be playing catch up. It was like touchdown, touchdown, touchdown type of thing. Obviously Atlanta they did have a field goal, and the game was essentially tied, after they converted a 2-point conversion. And then you get to the fourth quarter and it looks like a collapse by the Falcons defense. I don't think I need to say too much, but it's like, Darnold able to do some crazy Houdini stuff, on that one play to Jefferson, and then he just walks in. I mean, that's nuts to me. I still think he gets in, even if the guy's in a position to tackle, because it's Jefferson and it's one-on-one. But yeah, overall, just to me, I don't know whether to give too much props to the Vikings offense or I'm leaning more towards like the Falcons just complete and total defensive collapse, which you just don't expect with the talent they have in the DB room. But it happened, and that was the difference in this game and why the Falcons are no longer leading in their division. Now moving on, we have Buccaneers-Raiders. The Buccaneers, not protecting Baker as well as they would have thought. Obviously, one of his picks was kind of a freak thing to me. I was like, oh yeah, he throws it, the guy bats it, and as he's falling down, because he had to adjust his body in such a way, he's able to pick it. Bizarre, And it's like Aiden O'Connell has to leave. Desmond Ridder actually looks okay when he comes in. A good thing he didn't throw a pick, because that was his problem with Atlanta last year. Tampa Bay, really, Rachaad White running like a man on a mission, making the Raiders look completely defenseless there. And, overall, I think, obviously the Buccaneers, you're glad with a win here, but it wasn't as clean as you would have wanted it. Type of thing where it's like you're barely winning, and then at the end of the game you're able to win. But props to the Buccaneers, and let's see if you can hold on to that division. Eagles Panthers, an interesting game. I'm not really going to talk about too much about this. Hurts not being able to really pass it that much for that many yards. He obviously didn't have that many attempts, and he had a high completion percentage, but a lot of the times it's like he didn't have anything really pushing the bill downfield. And yeah, Saquon had a good game. you know, and, Jalen Hurts was able to run it a little bit, to make up for that sort of thing. But you look at this game and it's a lot closer. It's a lot closer to comfort for me. People are like, oh, well, they won. And it's like, yeah, but it was also really, really close at the end. Like Carolina could have potentially won this game or sent it into overtime at the very least if they didn't make the extra point. And it's like, yes, there was some kind of freak events like the Thielen catch off of a tip ball where he's able to get a first on 4th down. For the most part, I think that Chuba Hubbard was running pretty well. The stats don't show it, but he was running pretty well, against this Philadelphia team. And I think that that's a weakness to this defense. I think that they're a lot more dominant on pass rushes, but then even so, they couldn't get a pass rush on Bryce Young when he was in his own end zone off of the punt at the end of the game. And, just some missed opportunities, the drop by Xavier Legette, feel sorry for him. Obviously, he didn't have that good of a game. He had 8 targets and only 2 catches, but Thielen really emerged here as one of the reasons why they brought him in as that savvy vet that can do very well. Obviously, the play that ended the game, obviously, Darius Slay makes a hell of a play. And, maybe Bryce Young wants that ball back. But I do think that Carolina's just showing that, there are some people on this team that should be here next year and that they're willing to try and compete no matter who they're playing week in and week out. Jaguars, Titans. This was a doozy of a game. Not much to say. Tennessee just couldn't score. Just like Jacksonville, essentially. They even had 2 picks on Mac Jones. Mac Jones, throwing for more yards off of about the same amount of attempts, but no running game to speak of. Tennessee even had a running game, and they couldn't score. So ultimately just, a ridiculous game, and it's like there's a reason these 2 teams are 2 of the worst in the league. Dolphins, Jets. Now, a crazy game. We finally get Rodgers with a 300-yard passing game for the first time in a few years. I think it was like 1,000 some days or whatever, type of thing. And obviously, he only had 1 TD to his name. Adams and Wilson both at over 100 yards type of thing. You'd hardly think that, this is a team that, fell through at the end type of thing. But it's like you look at the Jets defense and they just ultimately couldn't stop Tua, passing attack, very heavy passing attack, and Tua cooking and that sort of thing. And, Tyreek Hill doing well, Waddle doing well, A-Chain doing well. Then Jonnu Smith at the end of the game just, carrying the team at the end and then winning in overtime. And yeah, Miami just, a crazy win that they definitely needed in order to, still keep their playoff hopes alive, with 4 games left and a 10-7 record, being your highest possibility in a stacked AFC. Good luck, Miami. I think that your defense really needs to be more consistent like it was a few weeks ago with tackling and that sort of thing. But moving on, we have Seahawks, Cardinals. Seahawks getting the sweep over the Cardinals for their divisional game. I did say I thought the Seahawks were going to win this game just from a talent standpoint. Obviously, Kyler Murray having some mistakes and that sort of thing. I overall just, think that, the Cardinals would have been able to compete without the 2 mistakes because essentially they got touchdowns on each of those interceptions. And obviously, 30-18, you look at the points and it's like if you take away the 14 points, this is an Arizona win. I know it doesn't work like that, but overall, Geno Smith, solid game, nothing crazy. high completion percentage, 1 TD. Zach Charbonnet, though, really carried this team, and I almost wonder if they should be running him as their lead horse and then putting Kenneth Walker in and maybe giving him more of a like receiver role. I know they don't really use him like that, but like I personally think that Charbonnet has had games like this where it's like, oh, they should trust him a bit more to carry the workload. But who knows? Who knows what's going to go on? But good win by Seattle. My Packers will play you on Sunday Night Football next week. Moving on to Rams-Bills. As we all know, the highest scoring game this year. The Bills seemingly unable to stop Kyren Williams, obviously. You know, interestingly enough, he didn't have a good average. I think that had to do with, you know, some of his runs just being predictable, but then, I mean, he was getting chunk plays, you know, a good amount as well, and it just seemed like you were either getting chunks or you were being limited down, but, you know, a lot of them were converting, you know, for first downs, and just, you know, not good run defense. Obviously, Josh Allen, you know, playing out of his mind, you know, 3 passing TD, 3 rushing TD. You know, if you had told me they would lose a game like this, I would have been like, that's nuts. But the Rams, they finally emerged with their offense. They, you know, Cooper Kupp didn't get a lot of catches, but he still had close to 100 yards. And then Puka Nacua really like showing why, you know, he's one of the best young wideouts in the league when he's healthy. But, you know, hopefully the Rams get hot at the right time, because I do really think after these games that if they can remain this hot, they can take the division from Seattle, whom they play one more time. And they are, you know, 1 game behind at this point, and they beat the Seahawks earlier this year. So, you know, looking at that, the Rams control their own destiny, and they look like a team nobody should want to play, you know, after this. 49ers Bears. I thought that the Bears, with the Matt Eberflus firing, would get that kind of interim head coach resurgence, you know, where they maybe play hard and they look a lot more, you know, confident and smooth because they're no longer under a guy that they dislike. But this just raises more questions about the Bears to me. You know, San Fran needing a win here. Obviously, like I said, you know, in that division, it's still very close and anybody could win, you know, the division still. But the San Fran definitely took a shot at their playoff votes with the Seahawks and the Rams both winning. Obviously, San Fran has to play the Rams here next week. And, I mean, it could be a statement win if they're able to come off a team that was reeling as well as they were. But overall, just not a good game by the Chicago. Their offense just did nothing. You know, crazy to me how, you know, Caleb Williams only had 134 yards, but he still had 2 touchdowns, and they had no running game to speak of either. So it's just bizarre to me that they were even able to score 13 points. San Fran was like, okay, this is a team we need to take advantage of. Isaac Guerrero came out and played great with the injuries to McCaffrey and Mason, you know, and I personally do think that he, you know, looked good before, and let's see if he can keep it going with those 2 backs being likely out for the rest of the year. Chiefs Chargers. I was really hopeful that the Chargers could win this. They played a lot worse offense early. Obviously, Ladd McConkey not in this game. I think that made it hard on them. They don't really have, you know, that guy that you want, you know, to be able to target. You know, Johnston did get some catches and do some good things, but overall, it was just kind of like you settled for a mediocre passing game, and Gus Edwards had an average run game. Some good runs, but otherwise, kind of a lackluster offensive game for the Chargers. And then the Chiefs, you give them the ball with a certain amount of time back. You were able to get a good amount of pressure on him, and you limited their rushing attack of Pacheco primarily, and then Kareem Hunt with, limited yardage on the runs. But ultimately, you're not able to beat Kansas City because they have the ball last. And we all know that they just have plays and ways to get first downs, which, whittle down on teams and ultimately lead to them, losing, where, you have a last second field goal that hits the doink, but it almost seemed like it was never in doubt when they were, within the 30-yard line with the Chiefs. Now, moving on to Monday Night Football, I didn't think this would be a very fun game. Obviously, both teams tied a lot throughout this game. I was like, Cooper Rush playing well, Burrow obviously still playing lights out and smoking, these teams. Each quarterback with a pick. Cooper Rush's was just kind of bad and stupid to me. Could have had another couple picks that would have made this game less close, I think. But they were, pressure on Burrow, pressure on Cooper Rush. The run game for Cincinnati, kind of non-existent, but the run game for Dallas, existent, and really, really helped them. CeeDee Lamb with a good game, not a lot of yards, but a lot of things he did, to make them competitive. And overall, just Cincinnati's defense kind of looking sloppy again, doing some zero blitzes, letting CD just get that first touchdown. I was like, oh, this looks like it'll be a long game if this is the way it's going to be. But the blocked punt, when you think that Dallas is going to potentially win this thing, and then their special teams does muffing it, crazy ending, kind of fitting to a game like this. But, props to Cincinnati. Their playoff hopes are obviously crazy slim. But, going in, beating Dallas when they haven't really been able to hold teams to as low as 20. But I get it. The other QB was not playing very, very well with a lot of turnover-worthy plays. But, that's what I thought of the games this week. Obviously, some interesting implications. We're now down to the final 4 weeks with bye weeks being over. So we're going to be able to see a full slate of games the last 4 weeks of the season. And we'll really be able to see who are the favorites going into the postseason, because I think it's pretty close amongst a lot of teams in each conference, at this point in the year. So we'll see, what's going on. But this is Cast, and I am your host, Casty Strader. And I will be releasing a Thursday night football prediction, later today. But as always, go Pack, go.